Hello class, this is chapter 3, Writing Effective Reports. After going through this chapter, you should be able to explain why reports are important to an investigation, list the ways in which reports are used, identify the various individuals who comprise your audience and may read your reports, list the common problems that occur in many police reports, explain the differences between content and form in the context of report writing, identify the characteristics of effective investigative reports, differentiate between a fact, an inference, and an opinion, and understand the benefits of well-written reports. Writing excellent reports is one of the most important skills that investigators must develop. It will examine how evidence is located and processed, and examine how witnesses, victims, suspects, and others are ultimately questioned. The report captures the essentials of an investigation. The importance of reports cannot be understated, and a considerable proportion of a frontline officer's time is spent writing reports. Reports are used, not just paper to be filed. Your reputation as an officer or investigator often rests on your report writing skills. Poor police reporting can jeopardize effective criminal prosecution. In regard to the uses of reports, reports are permanent records of all important facts in a case. They are legal documents. They are initially used to continue an investigation of the offense. They may also be used for other purposes, such as examining the past, providing a documented record of incidents, keeping other officers informed, continuance of other investigations, preparation for court cases. They also provide the courts with relevant facts. They can refresh a witness's memory about what he or she occurred, and refresh the investigating officer's memory during the trial. They also help to coordinate law enforcement activities and plan for future law enforcement services. They identify hot spots or areas where administration should focus more resources to help reduce crime. They also compile statistics on crime in a given jurisdiction, evaluate individual officer and department performance, and investigate potentially illegal police practices such as racial profiling, and provide information to insurance investigators as well. So remember that they have a variety of uses. They're used by prosecuting attorneys, officers in testimony, by the judge, by the jury if there is a jury trial, and ultimately they're read, as I listed, by many people for many different reasons. When we refer to the audience, it means all people involved who have access to these reports and read them. That includes other officers, supervisors, attorneys and judges, and jurors. It also includes city officials. There are also insurance adjusters and investigators, civil rights groups, citizens, because they're public record, and media. There are common problems with many police reports. There can be confusing or unclear sentences, conclusions, assumptions, and personal opinions. They could be full of extreme wordiness and overuse of police jargon and abbreviations. They can have missing or incomplete information, misspelled words, and grammatical or mechanical errors. And it is, again, essential that effective report writing skills may not be recognized as important, but they are crucial because these are the initial leading documents for an investigation into a criminal offense. So let's discuss the well-written report from start to finish. First is organizing information. The cornerstone of good report writing is organization. If you think back to when you were in school and you had to write research papers, you did research, you wrote an outline, took notes before you ultimately wrote the paper. And just like you did then, the writer plans in advance. You must make an informal outline and list what to include under each outline heading. Be sure to list the facts in chronological order. Now let's talk about structuring the narrative of the report. The opening paragraph of a police report states the time, date, and type of incident and how you became involved. The next paragraph contains what you were told by the victim or witness. For each person you talk to, use a separate paragraph. Next, record what you did based on the information you received. The final paragraph states the disposition of the case. Other characteristics of effective reports include the content, or what is said. It also includes the form, or how it is written. It should be accurate, factual, and objective. In other words, it should not have personal opinions or any personal conclusions drawn. They should also be complete. If there are 24 squares that need to be complete on a police report, all 24 should be complete. They should also be concise, very clear, and grammatically and mechanically correct, and written in standard English. When it comes to paragraphs, as I mentioned earlier, discuss only one subject in each paragraph. Start a new paragraph when changing speakers, time, or ideas, or when moving from observations or descriptions to statements. Write in the past tense. Use verbs that show events that have already occurred. You also need to write in the first person and as an active voice. You are the composer. It should also be audience focused. Remember who your audience is, and we talked about who all of those people consist of. Write for people who will read the report and need to use the reports. Avoid cop speak, quote unquote, or police jargon. Make sure to articulate any use of force in everyday language. Were the officer's actions reasonable under the circumstances as viewed by the objectiveness of a jury? Write reports that are legible and turn them in on time. A key factor in legibility is speed, and most officers need to slow down their writing speed. In regard to recording and dictating reports, in effect, recording or dictating a report shifts the bulk of writing and transcribing time to the records division. Even with recording or dictating, however, officers must still take final responsibility for what is contained in the report. The demand for transcript services and software to do so is increasing across the country. It is much more efficient and less costly, and even though the bulk of writing, as I mentioned, goes to the records division, remember that you as the investigator or officer are the one ultimately responsible for what's contained in a report. There's now the advent of computerized report writing. Computer hardware and software is now in place in many police vehicles for immediate reporting. Software selection may be tailored for specific departmental needs and linked to state and national databases for inquiries. Digital FTO and pre-sync streamline data handling and workflow management. These are software that cannot correct sloppy data entry. So that software's there. It helps with outstanding warrants and warrants located in other jurisdictions, etc. But it cannot correct sloppy data entry. So typing must be precise. Just as your reports are written precisely, your typing for computerized report writing should also be precise. You should always proofread your report before you submit it. Ask a colleague to proofread it because it's difficult to proofread your own writing. And then evaluate report. There's usually a checklist, and in your book there's table 3.4 in your core textbook. So that checklist should include rereading it, proofreading it, checking spelling, punctuation and capitalization, and checking grammar, And remember, is it audience focused? We now have the advent of citizen online report writing. Some departments are allowing citizens to write and submit reports using online systems. These are often used for discovery crimes such as minor thefts, lost property, vandalism, graffiti, and they will vary by agency. This prevents busy or understaffed departments from having to create no-response policies for low-priority calls. Staff resources can also be better allocated as online reports gradually replace telephone reports and the workload for desk officers becomes more manageable compared with a never-ending stream of citizens visiting police station lobbies to report crimes. The monetary savings are quite substantial when considering the volume of reports that are taken online rather than having officers take reports and write them. Depending on the vendor an agency chooses, online reporting systems can also facilitate crime tips and special form submissions and volunteer applications, and can even serve as a 311 system so that citizens can conveniently report abandoned vehicles, barking dogs, or even streetlight outages. The final report is the culmination of all the preceding steps that we covered, and it is for the prosecution and contains all essential information for bringing a case to trial. Now, a final note on the importance of well-written reports. A report written well the first time means less time spent rewriting it. A well-written report also keeps everyone involved in the case current and clear about the facts, which can lead to higher prosecution rates, more plea bargains, fewer trials, and an easing of caseload on the court system. A well-written report also can save an investigator from spending an inordinate amount of time on the witness stand attempting to explain any omissions, errors, points of confusion that can be found in a poorly written report. All of these benefits ultimately save the department time and expense, and they save a lot of burden on the court. Every police report must jump over the substantial hurdle of the exclusionary rule, which states that illegally obtained evidence cannot be used against a defendant in a criminal trial. So by explaining in detail how and under what condition a person's pre-existing individual rights were provided during the investigative process is important. The investigative report may be the one pivotal piece of documentation that makes a difference in the prosecution of a murder or a serial rapist. Well-written reports can reduce legal liability also for the officer and the department by clearly documenting the actions taken throughout the investigation. It can also greatly enhance an officer's career. Now let's go through a brief summary of what we covered in this chapter. We talked about how reports are permanent written records of important facts of a case. Remember, they are also public records and they are all legal documents. We had talked also about how the effective report writer attends to both content and form, but also excellent English. Third, we talked about how an effective report is factual. And finally, we talked about how a well-written report helps the criminal justice system operate more efficiently and effectively. Class, that concludes Chapter 3. As always, be sure to study your text. Remember, this is a supplemental tool to your textbook. Be sure to contact your instructor should you have any questions or concerns. Thank you again. We'll see you next class.